Beware the Lights of Louden by Nancy Roberts. Louden House, built on a hill over the bodies of Revolutionary War soldiers, has its own strange story. It was in the early 1940s, just after Miss Maria Dickinson Logan died, and yet I remember it as clearly as though it was only a few months ago. My wife Elizabeth and I occupied a room in the house while I was looking after the place. I don't think either of us will ever forget the nights we spent there when I was a temporary caretaker. If you are familiar with Louden, you know that it's the house with 4 white columns across the front, and it stands at the top of Neagley's Hill where Germantown Avenue passes Apsley Street. Miss Logan willed the house to the city of Philadelphia to be maintained as a museum. One night, about the middle of December, my wife was awakened by a feeling of intense cold and the sense of a strong breeze blowing full on her face. She sat up in bed and saw to her great amazement a tall column of cloudy white light extending from the foot of the bed straight up to the ceiling. Staring at it spellbound, she noticed that the light fell across the bed so that she could see the pattern of the spread. It also illuminated the dressing table and mirror. She was extremely frightened, pulled the covers up over her head, and lay there petrified. Eventually, she gathered enough courage to look out, and when she did, the room was completely dark. When I woke up, Elizabeth described the column of light to me. I could hardly believe this, and she was worried that I might think it was either a dream or something that had occurred in a half-wakeful state. But she seemed so certain that I told her to awaken me immediately if she saw the luminous column again. A few weeks later, I woke up early in the morning to find her calling to me. "Hurry, I want you to see this." "See what?" I was still half asleep. "That thing, it's here again." I rose up in bed and looked in every direction, but the room was completely dark, and I saw no signs of light. We then turned on the lamp, and my wife said that while I was asleep, just before she woke me up, there had been a bright, globular light at the foot of the bed. At first it was the size of a child's rubber ball, and then it began to increase in size until it must have been 3 feet in diameter and was taller than the bed. Again there was a filmy appearance, and the inside glowed as if there were light in it. She had tried to awaken me, but could only elicit a groan, as I seemed to be in a deep slumber. All the while the light was directly at my feet and partially over the edge of the bed. Afraid that it might grow into something dangerous, Elizabeth shook me vigorously. The light kept on shining and growing larger, but when I finally did wake up and answer her, she said that it collapsed at once and sank down into a strange-looking fold, similar to that of an accordion. This time I took her story much more seriously, and after I turned out the lamp, we watched together until daybreak. The light did not reappear. I was walking back to Loudon one day when a neighborhood boy stopped me for a few minutes to talk. It seems he delivered a newspaper early in the morning, and on several occasions in the winter, while it was still dark, he had seen lights flashing on the darkened front window of the house. I think he really wanted to know whether I had seen anything. He didn't let on that my wife had. Elizabeth and I both came to share the feeling that there was a presence in the house. Whether it was that of Miss Maria Logan or her brother, who lived here with her for many years, or even some earlier owner, we had no way of knowing. My wife thought it was Miss Logan, and sometimes when she would find a book or magazine out of place, she would say, "I wonder if this is something Miss Logan was reading." When she would say that, it always gave me an eerie feeling. A month or so must have passed, and we had begun to think that whatever had happened was an isolated event and would occur no more. Then late in the summer I woke up to my Elizabeth's hand gently pressing my shoulder, and her whisper, "It's here." "What is it?" I asked. I rose to a sitting position, and there at the end of the bed before me was an awesome cloud of glowing light, about 4 feet in diameter, suspended in the air. It was only a few feet away. As I watched, it began to float upward like a gas-filled balloon, and I thought it would hit the ceiling. It seemed to go straight up, but when it reached the ceiling, rather than stopping, it went right through. I know I cried out, but it was an exclamation of wonder rather than of fear. I checked the room to see if light was coming in from any source, and there was none. Passing the door, I tried the night latch and found it secure. I said to Elizabeth, "Tell me from the beginning what you saw." "I first woke up when I felt the bed vibrate due to the shock, which may have been under it, or it may have come from something striking the surface of the bed," she said. There, at the foot, sat an elderly woman in a white dress, looking very calm. Her clenched fist rested on the footboard, and I had the feeling that she had just hit the bed. She sat there bathed in the light, a light so bright that it illuminated the room. I tried to wake you, and when you first spoke, the figure began to dissolve into the luminous cloud. First the head went, then the body, and a moment later the cloud drifted up into the ceiling and disappeared. The last part of her story was exactly what I had seen myself. On the next occasion, the figure of the woman stood by my side as I slept. My wife roused me, and as I woke up, it vanished with a flash of light as bright as the flare of a match. After my wife and I left Louden, for our services were no longer needed, we came back a few years later and stopped to talk with the caretaker. He had seen lights on several occasions, but never anything as distinct or as close to him as Elizabeth and I had experienced. Mrs. John W. Farr, who was head of the Friends of the Louden, relates some of the neighbors say that Miss Logan is guarding the property. Children tell of seeing someone sitting on the sun porch, most often a little old lady. And I must say a number of things have happened for which there is no explanation. On one occasion, Mrs. Farr's committee members arranged some heirloom plates in a china closet in Louden House. Returning several days later to continue their work, they found that there were no plates in the china closet. The plates eventually turned up on a shelf so high that it took a ladder to reach them. Both the china closet in which the plates had been arranged and the house itself had been securely locked. When she was ready to leave the house one day, Mrs. Farr discovered that the large pocketbook she had left in the drawing room was missing. A search through the house proved fruitless. 2 days later, though, there was the bag, in plain view in another room. Nothing was missing from it. The late Dick Nicolay, author and former promotion director of Fairmount Park, heard a story that could account for the missing bag. A playful ghost called Willie, a member of the Armott family who died quite young, is said to return and move small objects about. The living caretaker had never had a problem with break-ins, and neither did the caretaker before him, who was on the premises for 27 years. That record is unusual, but it is possible that fewer people try to break into the houses said to be haunted. Might there be more than one spirit that lives at Negley's Hill? During the Battle of Germantown in November of 1777, wounded American soldiers were carried to the top of the hill on which Louden now stands. Many were dead or dying. Some were removed in wagons to Philadelphia, but some, not even dead, just comatose, were buried there while they were yet alive. Is it possible that when the winter winds make dried leaves rustle, the restless spirits of those unfortunate young men rise and walk again? Louden was built by Thomas Armott in 1801. He named it after the county in Virginia from which he had come. The house is reminiscent of those of Virginia, and he must have had many pleasant memories of his early years in the South. Armott, a distinguished philanthropist and a man of strong faith, was the founder of St. Luke's Episcopal Church. The house museum, containing much of the home's original furniture, is open to visitors on Sunday afternoons. It is located at the northwest corner of Germantown Avenue and Apsley Street in the historic Germantown section of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The mansion underwent restoration following a fire caused by lightning in 1993. Further information can be obtained by contacting Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. The end.